little bit of background about this topic before I really jump into it. I actually recorded a video about a different topic that bled into this one. And then I decided not to use that video because A, it was a little bit wandery, and B, I felt like this issue needed to be established before I talk about the other thing. Players often don't know what would make the game better, even if they think they do. Most people are not game designers. Most people don't really have and I don't mean just most people have not built a game. That is, I think, a very specific definition of game designers. When I say most people are not game designers, what I mean is most people do not have a mind for the structuring of mechanisms and systems to create a desired experience. This is a thing that it takes talent, it takes practice. Most people don't think in these terms. They think about their own personal experience only. So when I say that most people don't know how to make a good game or don't know what they really want in the game, what I'm saying is that they think they do, but what they want actually will hurt the game in the long run. Some examples, because I'm always about giving them examples. When 5th edition first came out, when the playtest materials came out, they had done away with the move action from 4th edition, and instead you just simply have an amount of movement that you can spend during your turn. And you can sort of split it up however you want. You can move, take an action, move a bit more, take a bonus action, move a bit more. Freedom of movement. And it feels very natural. It feels very smooth, very fluid, very streamlined, let us say, rather than having a move action where you have to do all of your movement and then stop. And as soon as you are done moving and you do something else, you can't move anymore. The 5th edition version feels much more natural. It feels like something that players would say, I wish I could do this. I'm frustrated with the way that 4th edition movement works, and I want it to be a bit more fluid. And Wizards of the Coast says, all right, we hear you. We'll give you what you want. The problem is the people who say they want that are not game designers, and they're not thinking about the implications of it. So what you then end up having is a system where movement very, very much favors the ranged attackers. This was one of several changes in the core system that nerfs melee characters. Number one, because you now only have your movement. If you wish to spend your action to move again, now you can't attack. That's a really bad example. That's a super bad example. The main thing is ranged attackers can now stand behind total cover, step out, take a shot, and move back into total cover. That kind of maneuver was always a higher level special ability for certain types of characters. And now it's baseline for everybody. Anyone with a ranged combat option can step out of full cover, make their attack or cast their spell or whatever they're going to do, and then step back in behind full cover. This means that ranged attackers have pretty much freedom of choosing a defensive spot. It also is what enables the rope trick turret, where everyone piles up into the extra dimensional space of a rope trick, and then they move to the exit, shoot, and move back in. And the opponents can't do anything unless they ready an action to retaliate, which shuts down multi-attack, etc. So there's that. There's the loss of charge, where it's like, wouldn't it be cool if charging was a special ability? Well, no, it wouldn't be, because charge is something that supports the melee playstyle. The freedom of movement also sort of necessitated a change in how opportunity attacks work. And now opportunity attacks, because of this, increase in the fluidity and the streamlinedness of movement, the grid is no longer assumed. You now only provoke an opportunity attack when you leave an area, a threatened area, not when you leave a threatened space. oh, well, this has much more fluid motion. I'm not getting bogged down in melee anymore. This feels a lot better. Well, yeah, okay, but that also weakens melee characters. And what you've done is, like, all of these things to make things feel more fluid and feel more streamlined have actually really hurt the gaming experience for certain types of characters, namely melee characters. So that's an example of the system changing to suit what people want when what people want isn't like they haven't considered the implications for the wider game. Another example, and this is sort of the example that I started talking about in my unused video, and it sort of wandered into this topic, is the difference between an active ability and a passive ability. Your typical optimizing player is going to probably gravitate towards that passive ability, because passive abilities are on all the time. You don't have to think about it. They're just on. They're going to enhance what you're already doing to some extent. So given the choice between I can do this fully separate thing, and I can't do my other stuff at the same time because it's a separate action, or I can take an ability that is on all the time and enhances everything I'm doing. Well, the second one is clearly what I want. When actually, your gameplay experience probably would be enhanced more if you take the active ability. Because the active ability is going to change the way you play the game. You're going to be looking for opportunities to use that ability. Maybe it's a situational ability, so you're going to be looking for that situation where it's optimal to use that power. Whereas with a passive ability, it's just kind of on. You're going to be doing the same thing you were. Like, let's say you level up and you get to choose one of these two abilities, and you choose the passive ability, your gameplay has not changed most of the time. Now, some passive abilities can be designed to change your playstyle. If it's a passive ability that says, like, after you attack an enemy with a melee attack, you don't provoke opportunity attacks from that enemy for the rest of the turn. That will change your playstyle. And that is still a passive ability. But I'm talking about passive abilities like you now crit on a 19 to 20 instead of just on a 20. That doesn't change anything you're doing. It's a straight buff. You are getting more. All of your abilities are now more powerful because your attacks have twice the chance to crit. But you're not doing anything different. Your gameplay experience has not changed in any way. You just do slightly more damage. So that's what I mean between the difference by the difference between a passive ability and an active ability. Some passive abilities will change the way you play, but most of them won't. They're just going to enhance what you're already doing to some extent, which means that your gameplay experience hasn't actually been affected. It has not been improved, more to the point. It has not been improved. Whereas a new active ability is going to improve your gameplay experience because now you have more options. A new choice must be made. Is it the time to use this new ability that I have? And whether it is or isn't, that's still a choice that you're making. So, but players want the passive ability because it is the tactically correct choice. It stacks with more things. It's, in a way, more satisfying to think about. It's more satisfying to think about. It's like part of a build. Oh yeah, I can stack all these things and do a thing that's really powerful over and over and over and over again. And that's part of the problem with the design of Essentials classes, particularly the Marshall's Essential classes at the end of 4th edition, was that they only do basic attacks. And then they get passive abilities and to enhance those attacks. And occasionally they would get active abilities that would enhance those attacks a certain number of times a day, or per encounter or whatever. But for the most part, it was passive abilities all stacking up on your basic attack, which means that you're just doing a basic attack every turn. That's not that interesting. That doesn't lead to interesting gameplay mechanics. It doesn't lead to interesting decision making. And so I think the overall gameplay experience for a martial character was diminished because of that. And I'm far from alone in thinking this. That is one of the chiefest, like, aside from essential classes being weaker than normal classes, which is also a thing. It's the chiefest complaint about essentials classes, that the martials are just boring. They completely turn their back on what makes 4th edition characters cool and special and powerful, and what really makes the 4th edition gameplay experience tick. They just done away with it in favor of stacking a bunch of passive abilities and rider effects on basic attacks. And when it came out, I thought, well, putting riders on basic attacks, it's basically like doing if once per encounter, I can add extra damage and a rider effect onto a basic attack. That's functionally the same as using an encounter power, using an encounter attack that is a whole separate thing. And to an extent it is. And had they approached the design of these classes from that perspective, then I think Essentials would have been a much better product. But they didn't. It was, you are nearly always going to be doing a basic attack. Sometimes you add an active rider onto that. Sometimes you make an active decision about when do I want to enhance my attack and how. But for the most part, you don't do that. You're just doing a basic attack over and over, and 95% of the time, you're not making a decision. You're just doing the same thing over and over. And that's bad gameplay. That's not bad gameplay necessarily. It's just, it's lackluster gameplay. It's a lack of creativity. It's a lack of, it doesn't excel in the way that you would expect from 4th edition, or way I don't expect from 4th edition. And that's kind of what we have in 5th edition now, is that all weapon users kind of do the same thing over and over every turn. Sometimes you'll decide to spend a resource to enhance your attack. For example, the Paladin's going to decide, oh, I want to burn a spell slot to smite here and just do a little extra damage, which is not that interesting to me. Some people like it. The Monk is going to be doing, bop, bop, bop. I get a bonus action bop. I'm going to spend a key to do 2 bonus action bops instead. It's not that interesting compared to having a suite of special, unique abilities that allow you to make decisions every turn about which abilities you want to use. And I know a lot of this video has been me talking about the changes from 4th edition to Essentials, or from 4th to 5th. But it's all, what I'm trying to establish here is that there are things that players want that are bad for the game overall. The gameplay is diminished by giving players exactly what they want, because what they want does not consider the wider range of possibilities. When I say in my rework, how I would redesign the classes, when I say that I would take away 6th level spells and higher, I think there's probably some people who think, well, that sucks. I like high level spells, without considering that high level spells are kind of what's bad about 5th edition. It's one of the big things that ruin high level play in 5th edition. It's why playing past 12th level is kind of garbage. Most people don't do it, and if you do, it's kind of a mess. You have to have a lot of agreements between the players, okay, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do this, and we're not going to do this, because that would just ruin the campaign. And removing them kind of solves those issues overnight. Now, you would, of course, have to have something to replace them. You can't just take away content and expect the game to be fine without anything to take its place. But what I'm saying is that, if I were to remove even some 3rd level spells, if I were to remove Spirit Guardians, I think, encourages some kind of degenerate behavior. It's a very powerful spell, and yeah, it's cool to use, but it creates gameplay experiences that I think are not healthy for the game overall. So if I were rewriting the game, I would remove it or redesign it. I think I think it's too powerful, just there. But it also, what's the best thing you could do with Spirit Guardians? Probably dodge most of the time. Sometimes you need to be going and doing other things, but for the most part, you want to dodge to protect your concentration on that spell. Protect yourself and the concentration on your spell. So you are an untouchable rock, high AC and dodging, with an area around you that does damage every turn and limits enemy movement. That is, it's too much for one effect, A. It also kind of encourages somewhat boring gameplay, because on your turn, you're like, oh, what's your action? I'm gonna dodge. Do you want to move? No, I'm right where I need to be. Enemies are still trying to get through here. That kind of very because that's the kind of gameplay that Spirit Guardians encourages. Not always, of course. Like, you got to take the tactical situation into account, but a lot of the time that is what Spirit Guardians encourages. That is the most default action to take while concentrating on Spirit Guardians. So when I say that I would take Spirit Guardians out, that's why. Because even though it's a spell that people like and a spell that people want, it's bad for the game. So as I go forward into the next couple of videos, this is what I'm talking about when I say that players don't know what they want from the game. They don't know what's going to make the game fun for them, even if they think they do. Because, and when I say players, I am specifically referring to those players who are not game design savvy. Some players are game design savvy, and so these statements don't apply to them, because they would think, yeah, we probably shouldn't have game-breaking effects in the game. We probably should have more active decision-making for all characters, rather than just a bunch of passives that stack up onto a single action that you're going to take every single turn. So that is hopefully I've made my point. If I haven't, please leave a comment, and I will read your comments. And if further clarification is needed, I will make further clarification. This is a point that I don't like talking about, because it sounds very haughty, doesn't it? I was like, I know what's best for the game. You don't know what's best for the game. You're just a player. I'm a game designer. That's really not what I want to come across here. Hopefully I am being clear, because this point is going to be going forward in the next couple of things that I'm going to make videos about. And it's important that I am understood here. And I don't want it to come across in any kind of like haughty way. All right. So let me know if you are getting what I'm talking about, or if you are, especially let me know if you are not getting what I'm talking about.